She's just the cleaning lady. 4 words that stopped me cold in the elegant hallway of Princeton University's Wilson College Residence Hall. 4 words from my daughter. Avery's lips that erased 18 years of sacrifice in an instant. I stood frozen. Gift basket clutched in my hands as Avery continued chatting with her new friends. Well-dressed kids with perfect teeth and expensive shoes. I'd arrived early to surprise her our first visit since I'd dropped her off 2 months ago. Now I wished I'd given her warning. My dad's a surgeon in Chicago. She was saying, her voice taking on that unfamiliar cadence she'd developed since starting college. Mom just wanted to come see me. She works for a cleaning service. She doesn't usually come to events like this. My hands tightened around the basket of homemade Mexican pastries I'd spent all night preparing. The concha sweet bread and empanadas that Avery used to beg for as a little girl. My fingers were still sore from kneading the dough after my 16-hour workday. I slipped away before she could spot me ducking into a bathroom where I splashed cold water on my face. The woman in the mirror looked exhausted. Deep circles under her eyes. Hands rough and reddened from years of harsh cleaning chemicals. Not the elegant surgeon's wife Avery had invented. I am Eliza Martinez. 48 years old, and I have never been more than Eliza Martinez. Not ashamed of it either. I clean rooms at the Lakeside Luxury Hotel from 5 a.m. to noon, work as a cashier at Freshmart until 7 p.m., and spend my weekends cleaning houses for wealthy families in the Chicago suburbs. Every penny I've earned for the past 7 years has gone toward one goal: seeing my daughter walk through the gates of a prestigious university. When Miguel died of pancreatic cancer, Avery was only 12. My husband's medical bills left us with nothing but a mortgaged house in a working-class Chicago neighborhood, and his whispered wish before passing: make sure our little girl gets the education we never had. I pressed my palm against the cold bathroom mirror, trying to ground myself. Perhaps I'd misheard. Perhaps she was joking, but deep down, I knew better. 7 years of backbreaking work, 7 years of missed birthdays and holidays because I was covering someone else's shift for the extra money. 7 years of watching my hands grow more calloused while Avery's stayed smooth. Perfect for the violin lessons I paid for by cleaning her teacher's house for free. You okay in there? A young woman's voice called through the bathroom door, startling me. Yes, fine, thank you. I managed wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. I straightened my dress, the nicest one I owned, purchased specifically for this visit, and walked out with my head high. The young woman gave me a curious look. Perhaps she wondered what the cleaning lady was doing, crying in a Princeton bathroom. An hour later, I called Avery and told her I'd arrived on campus. We met at the student center, her eyes widening at the sight of the gift basket. Mom, I didn't know you were coming today. She hugged me quickly, glancing around as if to check who might be watching. I wanted to surprise you, mija. I smiled the term of endearment, feeling suddenly foreign between us. I made your favorites. That's great, she said, taking the basket but setting it under the table. You didn't have to go through all that trouble. I watched her carefully. This poised young woman in designer jeans. I hadn't bought her with straightened hair instead of her natural waves. Who was this child? How have classes been? Is the scholarship money enough? Do you need anything? I asked. Everything's fine, she replied, checking her phone. I've been making friends with some really amazing people. My roommate's father is a hedge fund manager in New York. I nodded, picturing the tiny apartment where I'd raised her, the kitchen table where she'd studied late into the night, determined to earn scholarships, the same table where I'd counted coins from my tip jar, calculating how many more houses I needed to clean to afford her application fees. And you? How's work? She asked, almost as an afterthought. Same as always. Mrs. Goldstein added another house to my weekend schedule. The extra money will help with your textbooks next semester. Avery winced slightly. You know, Mom, you don't have to keep working so hard. I have student loans and the scholarship. I want to help, I said simply. It's what mothers do. Our conversation drifted into uncomfortable silence until she looked at her phone again. I have a study group in 20 minutes in the Wilson Lounge. Her eyes darted toward the door. Maybe you should head back to your hotel. It's a long drive back to Chicago tomorrow. I felt a weight in my chest. I thought we might have dinner together tonight. Oh, I already made plans with my friends. Maybe lunch tomorrow before you go. I nodded, understanding the dismissal. As I rose to leave, a group of students entered the cafe. One of them, a tall blonde girl, waved enthusiastically. Avery, are we still on for dinner at Marcel's? Avery brightened immediately. Absolutely, Olivia. Hey, come meet this is Eliza. Not my mother, just Eliza. The blonde girl. Olivia extended her hand with the practiced ease of someone raised in social circles. Nice to meet you. Are you visiting campus too? Before I could answer, Avery jumped in. Eliza works for my family back in Chicago. She was in the area and wanted to say hello. The blood drained from my face. I somehow managed to smile and shake Olivia's hand. But inside something shattered, the final piece of the illusion that my daughter was still the grateful child I'd raised. It's so nice of you to visit Avery, Olivia continued, oblivious to the tension. My family's housekeeper has been with us since I was born. She's practically family. How wonderful, I murmured, catching Avery's pleading look. She wanted me to play along to accept this role she'd cast me in. I'd played many roles in my life. Widow, breadwinner, nurturer. But family housekeeper to my own child was not one I was willing to accept. I should go, I said quietly. Avery, I'll text you about tomorrow. As I walked away, I heard Olivia ask, Is she from Mexico? Her accent is so authentic. I didn't hear Avery's response. I didn't want to. Back at my budget hotel room, the cheapest I could find within driving distance of Princeton. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. The air conditioner hummed noisily, drowning out the traffic from the highway. But not the thoughts in my head. I reached for my phone and scrolled through photos. Avery. At her high school graduation valedictorian, her speech thanking me for my sacrifices, bringing tears to everyone's eyes. Avery at 16, proudly holding her first Princeton acceptance letter. Avery at 12 curled against me at Miguel's funeral. Both of us devastated, but determined to move forward together. Where had that girl gone? When had my daughter decided I wasn't good enough to acknowledge? I thought of Miguel, of what he would say if he could see this moment. He had been so proud of his work as a construction foreman, of building things with his hands that would last, never be ashamed of honest work. He would tell Avery, the people who look down on others for how they earn their bread are the ones who should feel shame. I wondered if Avery remembered those words. I wondered if she remembered him at all, or if she'd replaced him in her mind with the fictional surgeon father she'd created. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria, my friend and coworker at the hotel. How's it going with the college girl? Bet she's showing you off to all her fancy friends. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Not yet. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered room service, a small luxury, but tonight I needed the comfort. As I ate the overpriced pasta alone in my room, I made a decision I wouldn't stay for lunch tomorrow. I couldn't bear to see what other fictions Avery might create, what other ways she might diminish me to elevate herself. I texted her that I needed to get back for an early shift. A lie, but no more dishonest than the fiction she'd created about her life. Her response came quickly. Oh no, I was hoping we could spend more time together. Maybe next visit. The ease with which she accepted my excuse told me everything. She was relieved. I woke early the next morning, packed my small overnight bag, and headed to the front desk to check out. The young man processing my bill asked if I'd enjoyed my stay. It was educational, I replied, which wasn't a lie. As I walked across the immaculate campus one last time, taking in the ancient buildings and manicured lawns, I fought back tears. This place represented everything I'd worked for: Avery's future, her opportunity, her escape from the limitations I'd faced. But I'd never imagined that I would be one of the things she wanted to escape from. Lost in thought, I literally bumped into a woman carrying a stack of books. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, helping her pick up scattered papers. "No harm done," she said with a warm smile. Her ID badge read, "Dr. Rebecca Thompson, Department of Sociology." "Are you all right?" she asked, studying my face. "You seem upset." Something about her kind eyes broke my composure. "I'm fine, just saying goodbye to my daughter. She's a student here." "Oh, what's her name? I might know her." "Avery Martinez. First year." Recognition flickered across Dr. Thompson's face. "Avery. Yes, she's in my Introduction to Social Inequality course. Bright student, wrote an excellent paper on privilege and class systems." I forced a smile. "That's wonderful." Her perspective was particularly insightful, discussing her upper-middle-class upbringing and contrasting it with the service workers her family employed. Very nuanced understanding of her own privilege. My smile froze. "Is that right?" "Yes." She mentioned her father's medical practice and their home in Chicago's North Shore. It's refreshing when students can critically examine their advantages. The irony might have been amusing if it hadn't been so painful. My daughter had not only erased my existence, but fabricated an entirely different life. One where she was born into privilege, rather than having a mother who scrubbed toilets to create opportunity for her. "Dr. Thompson," I said slowly, "I think Avery may have been creative with her biography." The professor's expression shifted to confusion. "I'm Eliza Martinez. I work as a hotel housekeeper, a cashier, and a house cleaner. I've worked 3 jobs since my husband died 7 years ago. He was a construction foreman, not a surgeon. We've never lived on the North Shore. Every cent I've earned has gone to Avery's education." Dr. Thompson's face registered shock, then deep concern. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry, I had no idea." "Neither did I, apparently," I said quietly. "This puts her paper in a completely different light." Dr. Thompson said, her academic mind clearly reassessing my daughter's work. "She wrote eloquently about privilege, but from a completely fabricated perspective." I felt a sudden need to defend Avery despite everything. "She's a good student, always has been." "I don't doubt that, but academic integrity extends beyond plagiarism. It includes honesty about one's own experiences when they're presented as fact." We stood in awkward silence for a moment before Dr. Thompson spoke again. "Would you like a coffee? My office is just in that building and I have a decent coffee maker. I should have declined, should have started the long drive back to Chicago and the reality of my 3 jobs. But something in me wanted to sit with this woman who saw me, really saw me, and not as someone's cleaning lady. I'd like that," I said. Dr. Thompson's office was small but comfortable, with books lining every wall and framed photos of her with students in various countries. "I teach about social inequality, but I come from a background not unlike yours," she told me as she poured coffee into ceramic mugs. "My mother cleaned houses in West Virginia while raising 4 kids alone. I was the first in my family to go to college, let alone get a PhD." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "How did you manage it?" "Community college first, then scholarships. Work study, endless student loans. I'm still paying off." She smiled ruefully, and I never pretended to be someone else, though I understand the temptation. "Do you?" I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. "Academia can be brutal for first-generation students, especially at elite institutions. Everyone seems to have vacationed in Europe, attended private schools, had parents who could make a phone call to open doors." She sipped her coffee. "The pressure to belong is intense, but to completely reinvent yourself, to deny your own mother." Dr. Thompson sighed. "I'm not excusing Avery's behavior. What she's done is deeply hurtful and ethically problematic. I'm simply saying I understand the insecurity that might drive it. As we talked, I learned that Avery had used her fictional background to join certain social circles to gain entry to exclusive clubs and events. Dr. Thompson believed she was probably not the only student fabricating aspects of her life. "What will you do about her paper?" I asked finally. "That's complicated. Normally, misrepresenting personal experiences in an academic assignment would have consequences, but this situation involves family dynamics that go beyond my classroom." She paused. "What will you do, Mrs. Martinez?" It was the question I'd been asking myself all night. As I walked to my car, the weight of deception pressed down on me, but something else was rising up to meet it. Anger, yes, but also a fierce determination. For the first time in 7 years, I considered what I wanted for myself, not just for Avery. By the time I reached the highway, I had made a decision I would no longer be invisible. When I returned to Chicago, I called the financial aid office at Princeton. After identifying myself as Avery's mother and providing her student ID number, I began asking questions. "I'd like to understand exactly what financial aid my daughter is receiving," I said to the administrator on the phone. "Of course, Mrs. Martinez Avery has the Princeton grant, which was awarded based on your family's financial situation. It covers about 70% of her costs. There's also a work-study component and some loans in her name." "And what information was used to determine our financial situation?" "The FAFSA you completed, plus the scholarship essay, where Avery detailed her background as the daughter of a single mother working multiple low-wage jobs to support her." So she hadn't been ashamed of my work when it meant free money. My hands trembled as I took notes. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Well, there is the Perseverance Scholarship. She received $10,000 for students who've overcome significant hardships. Her essay about watching you work 3 jobs while maintaining straight A's was quite moving. The committee was particularly touched by her description of helping you clean houses on weekends when she was younger." Another fiction. Avery had never helped me clean houses. She'd been too busy with the advanced placement classes and extracurricular activities I'd encouraged her to pursue. Instead, I thanked the administrator and hung up feeling strangely calm. The next call I made was to Victor Rodriguez, a lawyer I knew, through the Hispanic Community Center, where I occasionally volunteered. "Eliza, what can I do for you?" Victor's voice was warm and familiar. "I need to understand my financial obligations regarding my adult daughter's education." After explaining the situation, Victor's advice was clear. "Legally, you have no obligation to pay for Avery's education. She's an adult morally. That's between you and your conscience." I stared at the calendar on my wall with shifts at the hotel and Freshmart carefully color-coded weekend cleaning jobs noted in the margins. Every hour of my life allocated to generating income for Avery's future. "What if I wanted to go back to school myself?" I asked suddenly. Victor's surprise was audible. "That would be wonderful." "Eliza, what would you study?" "Business management." Maybe I've always been good with numbers with organizing. I thought of the efficient systems I'd developed at the hotel, the way I'd scheduled my complex work life, the budgeting that had allowed me to save for Avery's education. "Chicago Central has an excellent program," Victor said. "My sister teaches there. I could put you in touch." My next call was to Chicago Central Community College, where I registered for their business management program. The admissions counselor seemed surprised by my enthusiasm. "I've been putting my education on hold for too long." I explained, "It's time I invested in myself." The tuition would come from the money I'd been saving for Avery's next semester, the money I now realized she didn't truly value or understand the source of. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd counted coins for Avery's application fees, and wrote 2 emails. The first was to Avery's academic advisor requesting a meeting over video conference. The second was to Avery herself, simply stating, "We need to talk. I've scheduled a meeting with your advisor, Mr. Chen, for Thursday at 4 p.m. Please be there." She called me immediately. Her voice panicked. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you talking to my advisor?" "We'll discuss everything on Thursday." I replied calmly, surprising myself with my steadiness. If this is about what happened during your visit. Thursday, Avery, 4 p.m. For the first time in years, I hung up on my daughter and focused on my own homework, the intake forms for my first semester of college. The next few days passed in a blur. I worked my usual shifts, but with a new perspective. Each bed I made at the Lakeside Luxury, each item I scanned at Fresh Mart represented not just Avery's future now, but my own. Maria noticed the difference immediately. "Something's changed," she said as we stripped sheets from a suite that had hosted a bachelor party the night before. "You're smiling." I enrolled in community college. I told her, business management. Maria stopped working and stared at me. "Eliza Martinez, after all these years of talking about it, you're finally doing it." I nodded, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. "It's time." And Avery. How did she take the news? I focused on tucking hospital corners into the fresh sheets. "She doesn't know yet. We're having a meeting tomorrow." Maria's eyebrows shot up. "A meeting sounds serious." "It is." I told her briefly about my visit to Princeton, about discovering Avery's deception. "That ungrateful little—" Maria began, but I cut her off. "She's still my daughter. I'm angry and hurt, but I still love her." "Of course you do. But love doesn't mean being a doormat. Eliza, you've given that girl everything." "Not everything," I said quietly. "I never gave her the example of a mother who valued herself enough to pursue her own dreams." Maria's eyes softened. Maybe that's the most important lesson she'll learn at that fancy school. Mr. Chen's face was kind but serious on the video call. Avery sat in his office looking smaller than I remembered, her eyes darting nervously between the screen and her advisor. "Thank you for making time for this meeting." I began. I wanted to clarify some misunderstandings about Avery's background and financial situation. I spoke clearly and deliberately, explaining my actual work history, our actual living situation, and the sacrifices that had actually been made for Avery's education. I detailed the lies she had told her professor and friends, and finally the discovery that she had leveraged my struggles for scholarship money while simultaneously distancing herself from me. Mr. Chen looked shocked. Avery stared at the floor, tears streaming down her face. "In light of this," I continued, "I've made some decisions. First, I will no longer be contributing financially to Avery's education beyond this semester. The money I've saved will be used for my own education at Chicago Central Community College." Avery's head snapped up. "What, Mom, you can't?" "I can and I will," I said firmly. "You've made it clear you're ashamed of me and the work I do. That's your right, but it's my right to decide where my hard-earned money goes. You have scholarships, loans, and work study available to you. You're an adult now, and you can make adult decisions about how to pay for the consequences of your choices." Mr. Chen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Martinez, I appreciate your candor. This is certainly a complicated situation." "It's actually quite simple," I replied. "I love my daughter, but I won't continue to be her secret shame while funding her deception. Avery needs to decide who she wants to be and how she wants to represent herself and her family." I turned my attention directly to my daughter. "You have options, Avery. You can continue at Princeton finding your own way to pay for it. You can transfer to a more affordable school. You can even come home and attend community college with me. But whatever you choose, it will be as your authentic self, not some character you've created." Avery wiped her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you, I just wanted to fit in. Everyone here comes from money, from important families." "And we don't." I challenged. "Your father was an honorable man who worked with his hands. I am a woman who has never missed a day of work in her life. We come from people who crossed borders for a better life, who held their heads high no matter what work they did. If that's not important enough for your friends, then perhaps you need different friends." Mr. Chen nodded slightly, and I could see respect in his eyes. "What about next semester's tuition?" Avery asked in a small voice. It's due in 2 months. That's something you'll need to figure out. I said, there's still time to apply for additional aid, find a job, or make other arrangements. I believe in your resourcefulness. It's one quality you genuinely inherited from me. After the meeting ended, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, alternating between tears and a strange sense of liberation. My phone rang multiple times. Avery calling back, but I let it go to voicemail. For once, my needs would come first. The following weeks were difficult. Avery sent texts ranging from angry to pleading, but I maintained my position. I answered her messages with brief but loving responses, assuring her that while my financial support had ended, my emotional support remained. If she was willing to accept me as I truly was, I threw myself into my community college courses with the same determination I'd once directed toward providing for Avery. My professors were impressed by my work ethic, my attention to detail. For the first time in decades, I was being valued for my mind rather than my labor. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail with the Princeton logo inside was a formal note from the Diversity and Inclusion Office inviting me to speak at their annual First Generation College Family Day about my experience supporting a first-generation student. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Dr. Thompson. Your story deserves to be heard. No pressure, but the invitation is sincere. I traced my fingers over the embossed university letterhead. The same university that had deemed me worthy of cleaning their facilities, but not worthy of acknowledgement by my own daughter. I called Dr. Thompson the next day and accepted the invitation. There's something else, she said. Avery came to my office hours. She was quite upset and very honest. She's been struggling with shame, not of you, but of herself. She applied for an additional work-study position and has asked to rewrite her paper on privilege, this time telling the truth. I felt a knot in my throat. That's a start. She also mentioned you're starting community college. As someone who began at community college myself, I wanted to say congratulations. It takes courage to invest in yourself. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected: pride, not just in my daughter's small steps toward honesty, but in myself. The night before I was to fly to Princeton for the panel discussion, Avery called. We hadn't spoken directly since the meeting with Mr. Chen. Mom. Her voice sounded small, unsure, so different from the confident tone she'd used with her friends. Are you really coming tomorrow? Yes, I am. I've been working at the library and dining hall, she said. 20 hours a week. It's hard trying to balance it with classes. I know it is, I said, thinking of my own juggling act between work and school. I told Olivia and the others the truth. She continued, about you, about Dad, about everything. I closed my eyes, imagining how difficult that must have been. How did they react? Olivia was mad at first, said I'd lied to her, but then... She paused. Then she said she wished her parents worked as hard as you do, that they're never around, always traveling or at charity events. I said nothing, waiting. I'm sorry, Mom. I was so stupid. So shallow. Yes, I agreed, not sugarcoating it. You were. But you're learning. We talked for another hour, the longest, most honest conversation we'd had since before she left for college. She asked about my classes, genuinely interested. I told her about a business plan I was developing for a cleaning service, cooperative, where workers would share ownership and profits. That sounds amazing, she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. You'd be really good at running a business. I think I would be. I agreed, allowing myself to imagine success beyond surviving. Paycheck to paycheck. Before we hung up, she asked quietly, Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I considered this carefully. I'm working on it. What you did hurt deeply. Avery. It wasn't just that you were ashamed of me. It was that you took advantage of my story when it benefited you, then denied it when it didn't. I know, she whispered. I'll make it right. You've already started. I told her that's what matters. 3 months later, I stood at a podium in Princeton's Richardson Auditorium, facing a room full of parents and students. I wore a simple but elegant dress I'd bought with my own money, not from a clearance rack, but at full price because I deserved it. "My name is Eliza Martinez," I began. "I am a hotel housekeeper, a cashier, and a house cleaner. I am also a college student, a widow, a Mexican American, and the mother of a Princeton freshman." From the front row, Avery watched me, her expression a mixture of shame and emerging pride. Beside her sat Olivia, the blonde girl from my first visit, along with several other students I didn't recognize. "Many of you made similar sacrifices to get your children here. Some worked multiple jobs, some deferred dreams, some crossed oceans or borders. Our work, whatever it may be, has dignity. Our sacrifices have value, and our stories deserve to be told truthfully." I spoke for 15 minutes about the reality of supporting a first-generation college student, about financial struggles and cultural adjustments. I didn't sanitize the truth about Avery's deception, but I also acknowledged the immense pressure these young people face. In the end, I concluded the greatest gift we can give our children isn't a prestigious education. It's the understanding that no honest work diminishes your worth and no amount of pretending makes you better than who you truly are. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, parents approached me with tears in their eyes, sharing similar stories. Students thanked me for my honesty. Dr. Thompson introduced me to colleagues with genuine respect in her voice, and then Avery was standing before me, eyes red but chin lifted. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said simply. "I was wrong, so wrong." "Yes, you were." I agreed, not making it easier for her. She needed to own this moment. "I've been working at the campus library and the dining hall," she continued. 20 hours a week. It's hard balancing it with classes, but..." She took a deep breath. "I understand a little better now what you've been doing all these years. It wasn't enough not yet, but it was a beginning. And I've applied for a summer job at Freshmart," she added, "so I can help with my own expenses." I raised an eyebrow. "The same Freshmart where I work?" She nodded. "I thought maybe we could carpool together when I'm home for break." Something softened in my chest, but I kept my expression measured. "We'll see." As we walked across the sunlit campus, Avery introduced me properly to her friends. "This is my mom, Eliza Martinez. She's putting herself through college while working 3 jobs, and she just gave the best speech this school has ever heard." I knew our relationship would never be the same. The innocent trust was gone, replaced by something more complicated, but perhaps ultimately stronger. I had discovered my own worth beyond motherhood, and Avery was learning that the path to authenticity is harder, but more sustainable than pretense. That evening, before driving back to Chicago, I visited the financial aid office and established a small scholarship in Miguel's name, not from his fictional surgeon's salary, but from the modest life insurance policy I'd carefully preserved all these years. It would help one student each year whose parent worked in service or maintenance roles. The Martinez Workers' Legacy Scholarship. The director read from the paperwork. "That's a beautiful tribute." "Yes," I said, thinking of Miguel's calloused hands so similar to my own. Some legacies don't come with prestige or wealth, but they matter just the same. As I drove home to my small apartment, I felt lighter. The hurt wasn't gone, but it had transformed into something useful. Tomorrow I would clean hotel rooms with the same dignity I always had. Tomorrow afternoon, I would sit in my community college classroom, pursuing my own dreams at last. And someday Avery would understand that the greatest act of love I ever showed her wasn't paying her tuition, it was showing her how to stand in her truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Because I am not just the cleaning lady. I am Eliza Martinez, and that has always been more than enough.